everybody. Welcome to the Police Condition. My name is Ryan Miller, and just a little about myself before we get going. I served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, and for the last 11 years, I have been in law enforcement, doing about 5 years in a county jail, and the rest of the time I have been on patrol. Sitting across from me is my wife of 16 years, Laura.
Hello. My background is more in psychology. I have a master's degree in forensic psychology. I am currently in a doctoral program for clinical psychology with this ID. I work for an amazing organization that helps first responders with stress and trauma for both them and their families. Learned a lot from them. We also have 3 kids and one on the way, so we definitely have that family aspect to law enforcement and the stresses that we all deal with.
Yeah, so the goal of this podcast is just to change the culture on mental health, especially in the law enforcement community. We all know there is a lack of physical health in law enforcement a lot of the times, but the lack of mental health is always overlooked.
So really, we got the name, the police condition, by the human condition, which is the positive and negative aspects of being human and the experiences that follow, such as birth, growth, reproduction, survival, love, and death. It's based off of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is psychological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. We kind of did a different approach with the police conditioning, as in the on duty, off duty, self awareness, trauma, conditioned response, social and political aspects, survival, safety, self and family, sex and dysfunction, and trauma and sex disorders, which we will all be discussing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of us will go through things and we'll either be too alpha to want to talk about it, and we'll sit there and we'll just dwell on our things and we won't talk to anybody about it. And I know from experience that that does not help. It
Mm-hmm.
really affects you in many ways, especially when it comes to your family.
Mm-hmm.
I'd catch myself just blowing up on my children for the littlest things, and it was because I would not talk to people about the things that were stressing me out.
I think a big issue right now that we're seeing is like the generational gap with the older generation of ways of doing things and just kind of like tucking things inside and not talking about them and turning it off, and the younger generation with more of a intellectual aspect of mental health and trying to like express these emotions, but they don't really have um, space to say that, or acceptance to say that. So I think there's just miscommunication, or just like a, not really miscommunication, I'd say it's more of a just a misunderstanding of each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, being told back in my day, I'd tell you to turn your badge and gun in.
Yeah, because
It's
you're feeling a little sad. Yeah.
because you're having a little bit of issues that they don't know how to handle because they couldn't handle them themselves.
Yeah, it's
So
like a weakness.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And that's one thing we don't want to be anymore, is that if you're having those issues in with your mental health in law enforcement, you're more of a liability keeping that in than you are actually talking to someone and getting it out and coming down to the core reasons for why you're having those feelings. And yeah, you don't need to turn your badge and gun in.
Mm-hmm.
You need to just talk to somebody. And that's a big thing about this podcast that we will stress all the time is, no matter what you're feeling, if you think it's just a minute thing, and but you're thinking about it a lot, and you feel it's affecting you, talk to somebody, talk to a coworker that my wife works for, and you know, be honest with them and tell them what's going on, because a lot of the times they can easily talk you through it.
Exactly. I've heard an analogy I really liked. It's basically like a car. Everyone's like a car. Like you don't just, drive it around, not give it an oil change, not put gas in it, not take care of the tires. Eventually it's going to break down. I mean, I think of a lot of these agencies feel like, oh, we got a brand new car working for us, and then they don't take care of it. And a lot of that is mental health, and it's under the hood. We don't really see those kind of things breaking until they actually break, and it's usually catastrophic when that happens. But yeah, with any agent, I think a lot of, at least North Texas agencies, have a lot of peer support within the agencies that can help, and you can talk to other officers that are in your environment and experience the same things that you do day in and day out. And those people might be a little bit easier to talk to than like going to a counselor who might not know anything about your work or your culture.
Yeah, I mean, There's, like I said, very good organizations like yours that definitely deals with law enforcement and first responders. So a lot of them that work there either have spouses in first responding or are former first responders. I mean, the person I talked to was a former police
Hmm.
officer as well, and she gave me a lot of good advice and helped me out a lot.
Yeah, I think my supervisor there, she's very particular on who she hires working for her as a therapist because of that. Because there's a lot of therapists that claim to know law enforcement or first responders, and then they don't have any experience. So then you spend all these sessions just explaining your job, explaining the culture, explaining this is why I'm so stressed. Whereas over here where I work, it's a lot easier because you know firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just talking to people, you always get that question, oh, what's the craziest thing you've seen as a cop? And that's one of the hardest questions for me to answer because, like, what? Do I talk about the body I saw the other day that was getting eaten by their dogs? Or do I talk about the drug addict or mental health case I dealt with the other day? I mean, to me, none of it's crazy anymore because I've seen it so much. And if you're trying to explain that to someone that's supposed to be helping you, you're spending most time explaining things, and then they're having to process what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
instead of talking to someone who has been in law enforcement. That, oh yeah, I've seen that before. I know exactly I know exactly what that did to me when I saw that and how
Yeah.
it made me feel.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to just jump into that trauma either. Like, oh, yeah, that was a terrible experience. Let me just talk about it. And a lot of times you guys do. Maybe just like, locker room talk or whatever. You just talking about experiences. And when you leave that, you realize, oh, crap, that affected me differently. And maybe I shouldn't be talking about it like that because it really is affecting me. And that
Right.
manifests in all sorts of ways with your work life, with your home life, everything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and like I said, it was really nice to talk to someone who understood.
Mm, yeah.
And that's that feeling of being understood and not being judged, because if you do make some sort of dark humor joke, they've probably made that same joke in their life before.
Yeah.
Because you say it to someone who's never seen this stuff and you say something dark humor, they're like, oh man, this person's really messed up.
Hmm.
Maybe they need to be in an institution.
Well, and I think too that's kind of what this focus is with this podcast is raising the awareness to be able to have the understanding of we all experience things and we all are affected differently, but it all affects us. So even talking, with your coworkers at work, not even in a therapeutic environment, just talking with your buddies, having that like, just watching someone talk about something and maybe seeing their reaction and realizing, picking up some cues, verbal cues or body cues of just like, oh, this is really affecting him, and being able to reach out and be a little bit vulnerable and talk to them about it shouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, and it's funny you say body cues, right? Like, I mean, that's one of the big things we learn in the academy is watch people's body language, watch their body cues when it's coming to someone that might have drugs on them or might want to run or might want to hurt you. But we never say, like, hey, see what your buddy's doing. What are their body cues showing you?
Yeah.
Like, maybe there's something going on in their lives, and if you don't think anything different, you don't pay attention to it, they'll never seek out the help because maybe they don't realize they can.
Yeah, maybe you're experiencing the same thing too. You're going through the same thing, and you guys can help each other out too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been very open about some of the issues I've had in the past now, and I tell all my friends, if you ever need someone to talk to, please reach out. I'm always there for you. And when it comes to my cop friends, my Marine Corps buddies, I mean, my Marine Corps buddies, a couple of them are firefighters, and I talk to one of them all the time, and we always just BS.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are some serious conversations that need to be had because we do love each other and care about each other.
Yeah. And I just take that a little further to the family aspect of things too. I think a lot of people don't want to bring it home and talk to their spouse about it. Sometimes they need to. I think that is really important for like a open line of communication to like make sure boundaries within your spouse. Like if they don't want to hear the gruesome, graphic stuff, like then don't share that. But talk to them. Maybe you would be surprised to know how much they would be willing to have an open ear for you and talk things through.
Yeah, I guess I'm just lucky I have a weird wife that likes to hear that stuff.
I really do.
We weren't really expecting to talk a whole lot about anything just because this is kind of an intro episode, just kind of getting the feels out there and seeing if people would be interested in listening to this. But since we are on the topic, especially when it comes to things that you see and things that linger, I had an experience which we talked about, um, where it was a man was riding his bike on a road and got hit by a car, and I was the first one there, and there was a lady there who I think was the nurse, and she was giving the man CPR, trying to save him. She's like, "It's not working. Can you give him mouth to mouth while I do the pumps?" So I go in there and I'm she's giving him the pumps and I'm giving him the breath, but the whole time as I'm giving him the breath, his skull was broken open, and every breath I give into him, his brain was protruding out a little bit. And I apologize if this is graphic, but I feel like the people who are going to be listening to this, have seen these things before. Um, but it was something that I was like, it happened, it ended. Medics transported him. The suspect, or the male, did end up dying. But I didn't really think much about it. But then I realized a couple days later, I was thinking about it. A week later, it popped up in my head, and it was a vivid memory. And a couple weeks after that, kind of popped in my head. It keeps popping up in my head. Now, it wasn't an all the time thing, but it was something that lingered. And when it popped up in my head, I felt it. I had those feelings of, oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of haunts you a little bit.
Yeah, very much. And it was chance has just happened, but it's still one of those things. It's like it's a pretty gruesome thing to see as a person, even if you're a cop and you've seen things. I mean, I've seen several deaths, suicides, and but that one, I don't know. Like I said, as I told you in the past, that I think it was because it was more personal because I was putting my life into this man trying to save him. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard not to think of your own mortality, even though someone else is experiencing it.
right, but that's just one of those things that I didn't realize was truly lingering around, and then I talked to it, and I consider myself lucky to have a wife in the profession she's in, and who's very open to talk to me about these things. But a lot of people don't have that, and like I said, if you need to talk to a buddy about it, or you need to talk to someone else, please do. Don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, and I think experiences specifically like that are based in trauma, because it did kind of change your aspect of a lot of things, change your perspective on some things. They're sticky. They stay in your brain, and they will come at you out of nowhere sometimes, or they will stick with you throughout the day. And it's scary if you don't just like let that out. If you keep avoiding it, if you keep pushing it in the background, it's gonna come back. You can't hide from things like that.
No, you cannot.
No, you
As
cannot.
much as you'd like to sometimes, it's like you just like to push it down and not think about it and
Mhm.
say, hey, it happens and this is part of the job. Like, yeah, it's part of our job. It very much is, but it still sucks.
Yeah.
Death is not something people want to see, even when it's part of your job. No one wants to see someone die. No one wants to have to shoot somebody. No one wants to do any of that stuff. But sometimes it's required of us.
Yeah, and definitely don't want to see that. Definitely don't want to experience it, but then you definitely don't want to recall that and like experience it again and again until you've processed it. That's kind of why we shun away from these things, because it's not good feelings. I mean, that kind of processing isn't great for everybody, but in the end, it does help, and it's a lot better at the end.
Oh yeah, I didn't like thinking about it. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
You want to go back to the experience that was awful for
Hey,
you?
you
Let's
remember
talk
that?
about
Yeah, you
that.
remember that? That was awesome, right? No, no, it wasn't.
Tell me more.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's just those things we deal with, but we got to learn how to deal with them correctly.
Mhm.
Pushing it back, yeah, jokes help. Dark humor helps. That's kind of a thing of us. We have dark humor, and then yeah, it helps. It definitely does. It'll make you feel better sometimes for a little bit,
Mhm.
but it doesn't make it go away,
Yeah.
and it might never go away. I mean, I still have thoughts of that incident,
Yeah.
but it doesn't haunt me like it was.
And I'd say the beauty, but I guess it'd be the opposite of beauty. But um, the terrible thing about that sticky matter of trauma that you kind of think that you're avoiding or suppressing, it will manifest, like I said before, it'll manifest somewhere. And if it's not within you, and like alcoholism and taking that extra drink every night, or yelling at your spouse, or yelling at your kids, or punching a wall, like it will manifest some way, and it's usually not in a good way.
Yeah, I've never had that happen. I don't know what
Never,
you're talking
no.
about.
Never.
But see, I'm open to talk about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't, not for a long time,
Yeah.
but I had to wake up and realize that my very young children don't need me yelling at them. They need me nurturing them and taking care of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it still happens. If you have kids, you understand they could be annoying as hell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you expect? I mean, you're hired to put on a uniform and expect to be perfect, and you go out on the job and help other people, and you can't mess up. You can't. Either another person's life's in danger, your life's in danger, or the administration is going to hound you for some sort of political BS that you could lose your job. So you have to be perfect. So of course, in your everyday life, well, your brain's conditioned to think that as well. I need to be perfect, and if I'm not, then I've failed completely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the admin wants you to be a robot.
Mm.
The public doesn't.
Yeah.
How do you mix both?
Yeah.
And I will say I'm lucky that the department I work for now, I don't have that issue whatsoever, and it helps a lot. But a lot of guys aren't that lucky.
I mean, yeah. There's a ton of departments that see you as a number, but treat you like family, right? But don't really treat you like family.
Yeah, I've been there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we're all about you and your family, and we put up this facade of mental health, but they don't actually care.
And that's sad. And I think that kind of goes back to that generational issue where there's just, and I'm not saying like all older generations are like this, but I think they just have run at a certain, way of doing things and functioning, and they're okay with it. And
pushing it down in alcohol.
Yeah, maybe. But they're content with it. They think it works, it's functional. Why not just keep it the same? And I think there's a little bit of fear of change maybe in that. And then there's some that, maybe push it too far, and it's a little too much of that. And there needs to be a healthy balance, I think.
Right. I mean, that aspect of, well, it's been working for 100 years. Why change it? Well, yeah, but all your cops are dying after retirement. What, 10, 15 years after retirement? I mean, there's a big number in that where most cops that retire don't really live past, what is it, 65 or something?
Not even retirement. You got a high suicide rate for you guys.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story too. Yeah. That's a whole nother story that I don't think we can get into tonight. Yeah. But yeah,
you got definitely a lot of risks, health risks for sure.
Very much so. Very much so.
So that's pretty much what we kind of wanted to put out there for our first episode. Just kind of give you an idea, just a little bit about what we're doing, what we want to accomplish, and then the episodes after this, I don't know, we were kind of just shooting in the air. We kind of wanted more of an eclectic approach on different episodes, so we might have some about just law enforcement, just mental health, a little bit of both, some about family and health, some about sex and relationships, but then we kind of want to go outside the box a little bit and maybe have some of those episodes where we kind of talk about nothing and bullshit about, Bigfoot or aliens or just random topics that, might be of interest to some of you guys. But
yeah, because I have some good semi-ghost stories that involve working. So
we'll mix the two then.
Anything like that. And then we, if people really want to listen, we'd like to get some people on. I got a lot of friends that have a lot of good stories, I would really love to do an episode about supervision in law enforcement, and that higher up, that chain of command. Because, like I said, I work for a good department, and my chief is amazing, and he's not like those old guys. Because he's not. He's my age, and he's awesome.
Yeah.
So he's got a whole different aspect on it, and I'd like to, see if we can get him on and maybe talk to him. But that's all in the future here. So
different types of people. I mean, maybe Carl Young will come on and we'll talk to him.
And he did.
Yeah. A little dead.
That'd be a ghost story episode, I guess.
Ghost story, yes. Nice.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been The Police Condition. This is Ryan.
This is Laura.
We're 1042.